Hi all, I want to look at a round 2 game between Morozevich playing white and Akopian playing black. So this was Russia versus Armenia, and actually the only decisive game in the 4-board men's match. So this helped decide the match in favour of Russia, because Morozevich with the white pieces played very aggressively and had a very nice win here. So we're going to have a look at that. So d4 knight f6, c4 e6. So Akopian chooses the Nimzo-Indian defence. After knight c3, Morozevich invites black for the main line, bishop b4. He doesn't go for like a queen's engine or anything with knight f3. So he invites this main line pinning move and plays queen c2 here. Now after d5, sometimes there's a problem with this variation for white, which puts off the white players, in that white's using a lot of moves with his queen. So he encourages black now to take on c3. So white retains the 2 bishops and black gives up that bishop. But black gets a lot of time now to attack white's centre. So you see now there's a central pressure which is quite annoying. And black's already developed a piece, and there's easy development to follow up. Now here is where Morozevich starts playing quite dynamically. Instead of trying to defend the centre on d4 with a passive move like e3 or knight f3, or an ordering looking move, he captures away from the centre, which usually would be a bad idea. But here he might be playing b4 later to support that pawn, so it's not so bad. Now Akopian, he increases the space with d4, and Morozevich now switches the queens to g3, just to target this g7 pawn, and potentially try and discourage black from castling kingside, because of a primitive move like bishop h6. But this is exactly what black did. He castled kingside anyway, inviting bishop h6. So we've got here the makings of a very exciting game already out of the opening. I have no idea if this is opening theory. And it's weird and wacky now, the continuation. Black defends the g7 pawn with knight e8, and now white plays h4. Forget about development or any other pieces. So it looks as though we're seeing a kind of beginner's game in terms of creativity and not developing pieces or trying to castle. In fact, white stops himself from castling kingside. So it has to develop this rook on h1 in a more creative way, which you're going to see now. So is there a method to this madness? After knight d7, white continues just with h5, but now there is a tactical idea of bishop takes g7, knight takes g7, h6, if black's not careful. So black continued now with actually queen c7 to challenge the queen on g3, and now white develops this rook on h3 by playing rook h3. So have you seen many Nimzo-Indian games with the start position like this out of the opening? Black now plays f5 instead of exchanging queens, and white now doesn't mind about the queen exchange and takes queens because he has the idea of bishop g5 now. So this pawn in the opening, which captures away from the centre, might be protected by this bishop now coming to e7. So it's immune at the moment because bishop e7 will be forking rook and knight. So black plays e5, and now bishop e7 is played. Black potentially has got this dangerous mass of pawns in the centre which need to be somehow undermined by white if possible, and we're going to see that now. After bishop d6, knight e1, the pressure starts to be exerted on d4. White can't really play b4 to try and cling on to that pawn because of a5, and that would be very dangerous for white. The position would start falling to pieces. So what he played instead was rook d1, allowing the pawn to be taken, because he gets in this punch in the centre with f4, undermining the d4 pawn. So it's all very creative play so far. After e takes f3, he doesn't immediately take on d4 with his rook. He instead plays knight f3 to prefer to take that pawn with the knight. Now black plays d3, the pawn was a goner anyway, and white now squeezes the pressure on the dark squares, which we'll see becomes a critical factor later. White plays H6. So the master plan out of the opening is starting to be revealed here, that actually black's been provoked into this critical dark square weakness. And generally black hasn't got the dark squared bishop here. So let's see, knight g5, knight e4, and now white played bishop takes f4, and black took on e2, bishop takes e2. So we have now an exchange of knights, and the position's cleared a lot, and white looks to be a lot better. The rook's not so bad here. White's got the two bishops, and black's got these horrible dark squared weaknesses. So white's done brilliantly out of the opening, from playing in a very odd way. After knight c5, white played rook e3, swapping this awkwardly developed rook for black's classically developed rook. And after knight e4, played bishop f3, king f7, and now bishop h4. So white retains this dark squared pressure. Now he must be concerned about these pawns. After bishop e6, he protects that pawn with rook d4. Not concerning about rook d8 because that square is covered. But black continues the assault on the pawns now. But white just plays b3, and after a5 threatening perhaps a4, he just plays, first of all, bishop takes e4, fixing a pawn on e4, and then a4, stopping this undermining. So black's starting to be frozen out now. Bishop f5. So this bishop's very passive as well, as white's control of these dark squares and this d-file. And now rook d5, so this pawn's being targeted, causing further weaknesses in black's position with b6 and commitments in pawn structure. Rook d6 now, threatening perhaps rook f6 or rook takes b6. So rook b8 to defend that b6 pawn. And now white improves the position of his king. He plays king d2, and after rook b7, king c3. Now rook e6 is played. And now rook d8. A slight problem with rook e6 was that back rank. And so why wouldn't black now want to just play rook e8? Let's have a quick look at that. Rook e8 to try and defend the 8th rank. There would be rook takes e8 according to my analytical assistant. King takes e8. And now a killer move, g4. Gaining massive advantage for white. So that's why that was avoided. So black became desperate here and sacked a pawn with g5. But it's starting to be hopeless. Bishop takes g5, rook g6. And now just rook g3, stopping any infiltration from black. e3. And now rook d5. Look how white is managing to cope with black's counterplay. With threats. Counter threats. Rook f3 check. And black's king is already in dire danger now. And here he resigns. Let's have a look. King g8. Rook d8 check is mating. In fact, it's mate. So that black position just fell to pieces there. Let's have a quick overview and summary of this game. It was a Nimzo-Indian played very dynamically by white, not minding about the loss of tempo in the queen. He captured away from the centre and creatively played queen g3, not caring about losing the possibility of castling kingside or his development. And then he played even more creative with this h pawn, and even exchanging off queens, a complete switch of strategy from the kingside attack to undermining black's central pawns with this idea of f4. And now we see the third plan is the dark square pressure being built up and the reduction of black counterplay and fixing of pawns, resulting in this crushing position where black desperately sacked a pawn but white just consolidated, just getting a crushing position. So this game was the decider for Russia to beat Armenia in round 2 of the European Cup Championship. I hope you enjoyed Morozevich's play, and thanks for listening. See you on YouTube.